The Shadow in the Woods. Deep in the heart of rural Maine, there was a stretch of forest known as Black Hollow. Locals avoided it, especially after sunset, whispering about a malevolent presence that lurked among the trees. They called it the Shadow. Emily, a 22-year-old anthropology student, had heard the stories while researching urban legends for her thesis. Skeptical but intrigued, she decided to spend a weekend camping in Black Hollow to document the folklore and prove there was nothing to fear. Her friends warned her against it, but Emily was determined. Armed with a camera, a flashlight, and her journal, she set off into the woods on a crisp autumn afternoon. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional rustle of branches. As dusk fell, Emily set up camp in a small clearing. She lit a fire and began recording her observations. "Day 1 in Black Hollow," she said, into the camera. "The stories are just that. Stories. There's nothing unusual here." But as the fire crackled, she noticed something strange. The shadows cast by the flames seemed to move independently, stretching and twisting in unnatural ways. Emily shook her head, blaming her imagination. Later that night, she woke to the sound of whispers. They were faint, like wind brushing through leaves, but distinct enough to make her skin crawl. Grabbing her flashlight, she scanned the area around her tent. Nothing. Yet the whispers persisted, growing louder and more insistent. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. The only answer was silence. The next morning, Emily found strange symbols etched into the dirt around her campsite, circles, spirals, and lines that seemed to form an ancient script. She took photos, her curiosity outweighing her fear. As the day wore on, the forest grew darker, even though the sun was still high. The trees seemed to close in, their gnarled branches reaching like claws. Emily felt an oppressive weight in the air, as if the forest itself was watching her. That night, the whispers returned, louder and more distinct. They seemed to come from all around, overlapping and echoing, forming words she couldn't understand. Suddenly, her fire extinguished, plunging her into darkness. Panicking, Emily grabbed her flashlight, but it flickered and died. The whispers turned into guttural growls. She fumbled for her camera, its small screen providing the only light. Through the lens, she saw them, shadowy figures with hollow eyes and elongated limbs emerging from the trees. Emily screamed and ran, the camera capturing glimpses of the horrors chasing her. The shadows moved unnaturally fast, closing the distance no matter how far she ran. Her breaths came in ragged gasps as she stumbled into a clearing, only to find herself back at her campsite. The symbols in the dirt now glowed faintly, pulsating like a heartbeat. The shadows circled her, their hollow eyes fixed on her. Emily dropped the camera and fell to her knees, paralyzed with fear. The last thing the camera recorded was her whispering, "I'm sorry," before the shadows engulfed her. Weeks later, hikers found her abandoned campsite. Her camera was still recording, its battery somehow untouched. The footage went viral, showing glimpses of the shadows and the symbols. But no one ever found Emily. Locals say that if you enter Black Hollow at night, you can still hear her whispers, warning you to leave before the shadow finds you too.